Welcome back, everybody, to Mic'd Up Millionaires. It's been a little while, and I feel like I say that on literally goddamn every episode I post. But we're back here, and today we got Kory MacKinnon. So, Kory, say what's up. Who are you? How you doing? What do you want to chat with today?
Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me on the show there, Adam. Much appreciated. And again, guys, I'm from small town Ontario, Sarnia, Ontario. A lot further geographically displaced from Adam and the crew, but I've known you guys for years, and I guess I'm a real estate investor at heart, entrepreneur at heart, and I also want to pay it forward to other people that want to learn how to do this sort of stuff here as well. So former national level athlete, still pretty active. My kids literally just competed in a triathlon this weekend. So I've got an event coming up this weekend, time trial on the bike. So it's a lot of fun. Always lots going on at MacKinnon House, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. Did I see something about podiums?
Yeah, my 4-year-old got on a podium for placing second, and his kids of Iron Kids. So
that's wicked, man.
Ran beside him on the bike and ran beside him on the run. So he wanted to hold my hand. I said, no holding hands. You'll go faster if you don't hold my hand. So
that's wicked. You're probably his Roger Bannister in that sense then.
There you go.
Watch his dad win and then takes after him. I think that's awesome. I was scrolling through your Instagram today just to kind of get a little bit caught up for this. And you've got a good post here I thought we could start off the podcast with, and that was your non-negotiables. So do you want to walk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, it's so important, man. I mean, Instagram is it's one of those platforms you got to try to catch people's attention like so quickly. And I was literally just shooting some content here before this podcast as well. You know, like how can we hook somebody in like literally just a couple seconds? But I think it's so important that people have non-negotiables, because so many people just like wake up, start their day. They're working for somebody else anyways. They're working for the man. They don't have any like non-negotiables. They don't care what time they go to sleep at. They don't care what time they get up at. They don't care what they put in their body. They don't care if they exercise or, you know, if they, what kind of content they're consuming anyways, right? So I think it's really important, especially like the school system is not set up for most people to thrive anyways, unless you're going to a private school or a really niche program. So you got to have these non-negotiables in your life, or else you're just going to kind of end up wherever, you know, like a ship without a rudder. And I make up, if people want to take a vacation, they usually don't want it. Like they usually know where they want to go on that vacation. They don't just be like, well, I'm just going to kind of like get in my car and first exit, I'm just going to go find a hotel. That's going to be my vacation. But if you don't have non-negotiables in your life, that's kind of essentially what's going to happen. So
yeah, that's awesome. So a few of the non-negotiables you were talking about were weekly leadership meetings, morning huddles, quality time with family and friends, and having not to-do list, which I think is actually maybe one of the least intuitive ones that has been the most powerful in my life. Is like, what are the things that I will not do for any amount of money, for any amount of convenience, for any amount of time. And I think having those is very important. So like some of the things that I've offloaded over the last few years were like, you know, cutting grass and like getting a cleaner and just some of the more basic stuff that like, even if you enjoy it, it's probably not worth your time because there's just much better things you could do. And for me, like everything on that not to-do list, like whenever you're doing those things, you're probably robbing something else from the list. So like if you're cutting the grass, you're probably not really getting the workout during that hour in, right? Or you're not spending that extra hour with your kids or family or friends. And you're certainly not working on your business during that time either. So little things like that I found to be very important. What are some other things that are on your not do list?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because like a lot of entrepreneurs, they don't realize that typically what's going to get them unstuck or get them to the next level is that 180-degree thinking. So I'm a big believer that business is usually more of a subtraction game as opposed to like an addition game. So you got to subtract all the stuff that don't make sense. And everything that you say yes to, just like what you're saying there, Adam, like every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something potentially and probably a lot better than that, right? So as you're cutting the grass, yeah, you're neglecting that workout, or you're neglecting that next deal or that next business opportunity, or that next relationship that you could be getting into, because you're doing something that could be hired out. And nothing against people that are cutting grass or doing the snow or doing the books or any of those types of things, right? We need those people in the world, and there's people that will happily do those types of things for other people. But, you know, I'm a true believer that we need more leaders in the world. And too many times, great leaders are getting bogged down with the details, and when they should be, focusing on other types of things. But yeah, leadership meetings like date night, communication sessions with your team, making sure you're doing SWOT analysis, like all sorts of different things that you can be doing, making sure that they're non-negotiable. So
that's awesome. What does what does a leadership meeting look like for you?
Yeah, that's when we get all the key members on our team on a call, and I'm sure you guys do these on a regular basis as well. We, they're obviously mostly virtual these days too, but if it wasn't on Zoom, it would probably be on some kind of a conference call on the phone. But we always start off with like a win, just because we want to get the energy high on the call or in the meeting. Too often we can be focused on what's not going well and all the problems and all the things that aren't going our way. But when you're actually focused on the wins, even if they're small, that's how bigger things happen in life anyways. It's always the cumulative effect of all the smaller wins anyway. So we share a win in their personal life, we share a win in their business life, and then we always have an agenda. So I don't do a meeting without an agenda unless we're doing more fireside chat stuff like here today. But I know that you have an agenda. You're asking some great questions, and we're always making sure that we make some time for like, hey, what are some of the things that we're not talking about that we should be talking about? Any concerns, any questions that people have? Great, let's make sure that we're all prepared for the next week or the next meeting. Reminders, you got to manage the details on these calls here too. And then, holding people accountable to any metrics that they said that they were going to be accountable to. And then we get off. So we don't want to make sure that these things drag on too long. I think a lot of people have meetings in their calendars that don't make any sense. So they should be always have an agenda, stay on time, on schedule, and make sure that people just get out there and start getting the results that they need.
Yeah, I think that's super important. I've taken all of my meetings down, like all one-on-ones are 15 minutes now, except with like Rebecca, who's essentially the COO, right? She's kind of running a lot of the behind the scenes. So that meeting is real crazy. It's half an hour. We go all out on that one. But yeah, I think reducing the time there and just having a purpose for that meeting is what can keep those ones concise and very effective in a small amount of time. Because how's the weather today doesn't really come up in a 15-minute exchange. It just doesn't work because there's other shit to take care of. So I think that's really important. Have you been finding enough time or making enough time for professional development for yourself? And what's that look like?
Yeah, and one of the things that we've forced into our company is just like a monthly book review. And I always tell people like if you go to the doctor, they're going to have some kind of a prescription, right? So, or like Tim Ferriss is always in his 4-hour body book talks about like the minimum effective dose. So it's like, what do you need to make sure that you're still expanding as an individual? And, frankly, we're a real estate coaching, consultation company, but a lot of the books that we read have nothing to do with real estate. Like, I don't even think we really have any books on the docket that are like real estate specific. They're kind of all encompassing, teaching people how to be a better business person, better communicator, be a person of higher influence. I guess we have one on raising money, but so making sure that you have time to read. So I don't know, some people think that they can learn everything from YouTube or video content. But I'm just a believer of show me your library, and the books that you've actually read and studied and reviewed and you got notes on, and you don't just read once and then like put them away. That really shows the kind of person that they're going to end up being. So I do that. I'm still attending events. I was in a mastermind in May down in Mexico. I'm looking forward to attending more masterminds and stuff like that. Been doing virtual stuff as well. I still have coaches in my life. So it doesn't matter how successful you are. Like the most successful people I know, it's kind of like Formula One car racing, right? There's more than just one mechanic working on the car. You got someone on the tires, the brakes, the engine, everything, the gas, and the car's off and breaking records. So
yeah, that's fascinating. That kind of brings us into the realm of specialization, and I imagine you've highly specialized your businesses at this point. Like how do you decide what is a Kory task and what's something to be delegated?
Yeah, great question. I think as people evolve, like your business is going to be evolving, and I just did a video on this, that people will, everybody's natural evolution as a business owner or investor or whatever it might be is that you start off being an operator, right? You're literally doing everything yourself because you don't know what you don't know, right? It's like, okay, I'm just in this in this situation, I'm taking care of everything. But the smart people will go to the director level, and that's where you build the power team, and then you're really just directing traffic. But still, you're your own manager and you're the CEO. And when people can get to that ownership level, that's when you can literally take a vacation, maybe check in a little bit here and there, or just get reports or updates from your team. And the business either stays the same or ideally it grows, right? Most people will never get to a director level, and very few people get to that true owner level, right? But what's a good task for me? I guess if it's not my superhero talent, if it's taking up too much time in the calendar, if it's something that could be automated and repeatable or just delegated, it gets off the desk. So yeah, but as a business owner, we got to make sure that we're working on those systems so that it can be put on someone else's other desk, right? So yeah, I guess that's kind of like the long version of what goes on my desk and what doesn't.
Yeah, that's an interesting point that you finished with there, is you actually have to have the systems in place to be able to delegate something. And I think that's something that actually took me far too long to really properly understand. You can read the E-Myth Revisited, you can read Traction, you can read any number of books on business and business development. And everybody will talk about the process and the systems and developing that end. But I think it's a totally other thing to implement that and take your day-to-day experiences where you're the operations manager, the CEO, the marketing manager, the finance manager, and you're everything all at once when you first start a business. And then, somebody's telling you to systematize it. And you're like, well, fuck, now I got to go learn some CRM that I don't even, I've never heard of. I'm not a tech guy. I don't really know how this workflow should go. But after, 4 years in business, working on one business here, I've really figured out that those systems were the answers the whole time. And and I think too often people will just take more work on themselves. The CEO, the starter type person, the entrepreneur wants to just take on every task themselves because they believe that they'll be able to do it better. When in fact that I found that even if you could do it 20% better than the next person, that's not going to actually make the difference your company needs compared to spending the time on the system and making it so that it's just foolproof. In my business now, we've taken the approach that if we're ever going to do something more than once, we'll just build a whole system around it. And typically it plugs in nicely into the CRM, into where all of our data is stored, into our process for writing offers, negotiating offers, disposing of those deals once they're under contract. It's all systematized now, but man, it took me a long time to really wrap my noodle around that. And I think we lost a lot of business, and we're extremely inefficient for not having those systems in place. One of the systems I've really embraced is own the data, right? So in the past, we had hundreds of thousands of flyers going out, and they would be distributed with each individual salesperson's phone number on it, rather than a central incoming phone number that went through a system that recorded the calls, tracked the data, and retained ownership of that information for us. And I know we spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on these flyers, and a lot of the data would just get lost because, maybe a salesperson is having a bad week. Something's gone on in their family, something's gone on with their health, something's gone on with their general morale and performance. And so they don't answer the calls the same way, right? And that's still a vulnerability when you've got a centralized answering service. But then at the very least, you have the data to call back and follow up on. And I feel like half of business is just follow up. And so yeah, I've been kicked in the teeth for that. But
yeah, here's a great saying, right? Systems don't fail. It's typically the people will fail, right? So, or the person behind, trying to follow the system. So one of my favorite posters from Stefan Arnio is reading eyeglass poster, do not F with the system. It's so important. And it's the totally unsexy side of the business, right? People don't want to be sitting at home making a Word doc here or Google Drive this, or, whatever automation program can help you out, but it's critical, right? So one of the things that we're doing right now is just automating our lead flow. So we get so many people reaching out for DMs that want help and this and that and everything else. We just need a way to hey, go here, and then the lead is captured and it starts a process where they can get in touch with us or whatever. So
Yeah, we've had some luck there with like basic ClickFunnels type pages where it's really just a sign up sheet. Like if you look at, for example, our buyers list is going to look just kind of like a ClickFunnel or a sign up sheet. Get your information there, will automatically trigger. One thing you might want to look into is called Zaps. So
Okay.
it's called Zapier, and Zapier will automatically. It works with tons of CRMs. Whatever you're using, it probably integrates with that as an API, and it will send a zap to your CRM, which then should have all the capability to notify you to actually do something and action the item. Or it can send it directly into a spreadsheet or something like that if you were going to consistently look at it. But again, automate it so that it's not going into like something you manually have to look at. It should be a push notification. But that saved our system a lot, right? Is having these automations and really getting it so that it literally cannot be missed. Like once something comes into our system, it triggers like all these different automations. And of course, automations have room for failure. Like sometimes they mess up. So still needs to be a little bit of critical thinking. Like, hey, if we haven't heard anything or nothing's beeped for a little while, like maybe we should do a test run on this thing. So I think the more automated, the more possible technological issues there are there, but it's just so much more likely that a human error will be more catastrophic. Like just not following up would be way worse than the system not telling you to follow up, right? Because you can still hopefully think as an individual. But yeah, that's been big for us. You know, one thing you mentioned there too that I wanted to touch on is we do a book club as well, and we do a book every 2 or 3 weeks usually, and I think that's really important what you said, because I see a lot of people just kind of like they're flexing on their number of titles, right? They'll read like a million books, and you're like, okay, can you tell me what happened in any one of those single books and what the real concepts were inside there? And it beats me to death when I see that. I've got like my Audible, it's getting a little thick now. It's maybe 30, 35 books, which is a small library compared to a lot of people, but I've read all those books 4, 5, 6 times, and I have 12, 15, 20 pages of notes on each one of those books that I can pull up. They're all very nicely kind of tabulated, you know, it's sorted very nicely by chapter and just my main points. And one thing I like to do inside my book notes is like, what does this mean for me? And what does this mean for our business? Inside my chapter notes for each book. And I just have a collection now, kind of a war chest of lessons there. And I find those to be incredibly powerful if you're coming onto a meeting or you're coming into a team event. You don't really know what you specifically want to touch on that day. You can just boom, fire up the notes, and you've got this whole collection of your own thoughts that are paraphrased from somebody's, life work in that book.
So important. It's so important, and I mean, people go through different seasons in their life too. So, I mean, you could reread that book 3 years from now, and it's going to speak, different things from the book that weren't relevant at the time are going to speak to you more now. And I think it's important, right? You're being a student of the books that you read, which is, too many people just consume stuff. They don't do anything with it. A great book that's out there right now is The Power of One More by Ed Mylett. I highly recommend that one. So I just got that one in the mail last week and starting to get through it. So yeah, when someone's like literally taken 30 years of like wisdom, they can put it into a book. I mean, it's just from some of these really smart people, you got to pick it up.
Yeah, that's awesome. So yeah, how do you think this changes as you're getting older, more mature, you've done business for longer? Like for me, to just give you context for my question, like, I'm 28 years old right now, pretty sure. I think 28. I've only really been doing, I've been playing around like hobbyist in business since I was in like grade 7 or 8 with kind of like landscaping, grass cutting, the usual stuff. And then really in the last like 4 or 5 years, I took it very seriously, got my mentor with Matt McKeever, started like, going all in and just kind of burning the ships behind me. And I think throughout that process, like time just moves differently than somebody that's been in the game a lot longer, like yourself. So like for me, it's like I'm in warp speed kind of all the time. Like because everything that I've been seeing and touching and doing is new. It's like the first time ever that I'm having to like deal with an employee issue, right? Or like there's HR to these things. There's recruiting, there's training, there's development, there's leadership, there's management, which I think is a different thing. There's all these new things that I'm learning for the first time. And so time has just been kind of disappearing. And so it feels hard for me to put my finger on what's best to focus on moving forward. Like, do you just grow the biggest possible team you can? Do you dial things back and try and relinquish some of your attention from the business and focus more on lifestyle? Like, I guess there's a lot of shit to unpack there, but like, where are you at now in your career? And then like, I guess really my question is like, what's the meaning of life? But like, what are you focused on now? How does time work for you? Is it still flying by? Is it slower?
Well, I think, that brings up a great point, right? And time is so precious and so many people waste time. I mean, my wife was literally at a funeral yesterday for a former principal. My wife's a teacher, so can't wait to get her out of that system, but it's just such a broken system, the high school system. But when it comes to time, my days are very productive. I don't like to use the B word, like busy. Like, sure, you can be busy, but are you actually really productive? And, just making sure you're always questioning everything that's going in your calendar. And I guess one way you can slow things down is make sure you have some white space in your calendar, like time where I know we're trying to be hyper productive and it's like I'm going for a walk or a run and I got like a podcast in my ears and stuff like that. And I'm actually trying to cut a little bit of that out right now. Like, I'll still do some of that. I used to do it like 5-6 days a week, always podcasting nonstop, going up for trying to get my steps in and stuff like that, or going for a run or a bike or whatever. But now I think it's also important to just slow things down and unplug a little bit, so that even if it's just thinking time, right? Just like block off an hour or, hour here, hour there, like maybe you bookmark your weeks with some quiet white noise, and white noise is literally just like nothing is in the schedule. You're not, and it's actually the hard work. That's where you got to do the hard thinking of like asking yourself the questions of like, the questions that will help you solve harder problems always happen during like time when there's nothing in your calendar, right? And it's so important. So few people do that. You'll have the ability to slow things down a little bit. And, as your business evolves, you can, the business has to be at a certain profit level to where you can replace yourself, right? And everybody should get a helper. Like, everybody, even when you're in grade school, I started off in grade school too. I had a paper route and I tripled the size of the paper route. And but I didn't do what Warren Buffett did, right? He actually hired his friends to go deliver the papers. He paid them by the hour or by the paper, and then he made all the profit and the tips and stuff like that. So we're never too young to have that first helper and that first employee. And when the business gets big enough, you should always be horse trading a little bit. Make sure you're always questioning whoever is working in the business. If they're just half-assing it and they're only performing at 50-60%, you're spending too much time on that person when you're saying yes to something that been saying no to something greater, right? So you also set a precedence in the company that we just won't tolerate lateness or poor accountability or whatever it might be when you're having subpar people in your company, right? So it's better to have a lean operation with full of like top performers or studs or studettes or whatever it might be, right? People that are all cut from the same cloth, and that's part of the culture. That's part of your mission when running a business as well, when that's really clear. And the leaders out front live in that. They're not just saying it, but they're living by example. I think it's really important too. Why are people going to show up on time and prepared for meetings if you're not on time or prepared for meetings either, right? So a lot to unpack there as well. And what's the meaning of life? Like, I think everybody has a number that they feel would be successful, right? But at the end of the life, are you going to be, on your deathbed wishing you made an extra dollar? Or are you going to be, wishing that you had cooler experiences or, hung around with the people, did cool things with cool people, and made money in the process, right? So when you can make money with friends and or people that you appreciate in the business, and still have good quality of life and relationships, and still focus on your health and that sort of stuff as well. Like I'm driven by passion, right? Like I retired from corporate. I'm probably working the same amount of hours, if not more sometimes, but I really enjoy what I do, right? Impacting people, seeing people be successful, having people retire from their day jobs, all those different things, right? So
yeah, that's awesome. One of my goals has always been to see 100 countries. And I wonder if that's not a little bit like, reading a couple hundred books and then only reading them one time. But I would really love to be in pursuit of that goal. But I find it challenging to make the decisions between what amount of time, or like the split of time that should be spent now building an impenetrable, fortress of solitude in finances versus like actually just taking advantage of some of those things. Like I too have had, I've been to too many funerals myself, and I'm 28. So I'm like, holy shit, like people actually just die, right? Or like, there's deaths of despair. There's like random accidents, right? There's like just things can happen. And you're like, well, I kind of wonder, because I have spent a, kind of stupid amount of time on business things in the past few years, but I have rewards for it. And so like, I don't regret that decision, but I also don't know at which point I don't know where the optimum point is. I don't know, like, because right now at 28, like, do you just go like super crazy, insane hard at building like an unfuckwithable business that literally it just can't be touched? And then maybe you find yourself in your mid 30s and you've got, whatever the portfolio looks like or whatever the recurring monthly revenue looks like. And every time I come up with that kind of scenario in my head, I actually get a little bit depressed about the thought of it. Like I have found myself thoroughly bored by real estate and answering the basic real estate questions. And how do you get your 7th mortgage right now when you don't even have one? Like some of that shit kills me. And I wonder how, at your stage in the game, you continue to be enthusiastic about it, continue to be passionate about it. Does it ever feel like a hamster wheel for you? Is it Groundhog Day occasionally?
Well, and again, you just made a good point, right? So if you're asking that or answering that question more than once, right, Adam needs to make a system around it, right? So, record a video on it and just say, hey, great question. Go check out this video. And, we're looking at what kind of platform to put a lot of our back end training material on. And the cool one that's out there, Sam Ovens, he literally couldn't find one. So he made one. I think it's called School. And it's to the point where he's actually trying to reduce those kinds of questions. He will make it so that if you have a question around 7th mortgage, you type that in, it'll literally, like, all of his video recordings are transcribed and stuff. So it'll literally pull up every time that the word mortgage comes up, or 7th mortgage or whatever. So people can literally go and hopefully get that question answered themselves. And they can only come, the questions that are asked are like the really complicated or complex kind of questions. But, I think everybody goes through, you're clearly a very driven person there, Adam. And I was as well when I was your age. Like I basically had one mode, and it was like get up and work. Obviously had fun along the process, but I missed too many, family events and birthdays and things that I probably regret now. And it's when I got into a relationship with my fiance and now wife that she helped to kind of ground me and balance a little bit of that side of my life out, so I could do both, right? I just wasn't looking far enough ahead in the calendar to get those things in first, and then obviously everything else is going to fill up with what I want to do as well. But yeah, I mean, if you put your head down, and a lot of people don't realize that they need to, just like Dan Locke's wealth triangle, right? You got to have an ability to make high income. So it's usually a skill-based thing like sales, or, what you guys are doing, which is a wholesaling business and real estate and those types of things. That's a high income skill. You got to marry that up with a scalable business. A lot of the things you guys are working on too, and then put those returns into a really high yielding investment. That's how you get really, really rich, right? A lot of people might get one part of the triangle figured out, maybe two, but not too many people get all three figured out. But when you do the work early, and you're obviously first, you're becoming first generational wealthy here. This wasn't just handed down to you. I know a little bit about your upbringing, and we have some similarities there too. I grew up in a duplex and nothing fancy. If anything, I went to a school and was made fun of, for wearing hand-me-downs and things from Byway and Goodwill and all that stuff, right? But you overcome and you adapt and you persevere. I'm glad I learned those lessons and had those feelings at a young age, so that by the time I was like a teenager, I was just like, I don't really care what other people think anymore anyway, so I'm just going to go do my own thing. But you'll be happy that you worked hard in your 20s when you're in your 30s, 40s, and 50s for sure. So, and you can basically just continue doing what you want to do, right? I like what I'm doing, so I built the business around, obviously having kids and family, and still working out and all that sort of stuff. But there's also 3 types of days, right? This is a strategic coach principle. if you guys want to learn a little bit about it. But the one day is going to be a focus day where you're just really, really focused. And I know that might be a lot of the days when you're a really successful, driven entrepreneur. You also got to make sure you're having time in the schedule for admin, like just admin, training, HR, receivables, payables, all those kinds of things. You can't just doing the books, doing the accounting, that stuff can't get ignored. And then there should be time where you're just like totally off, right? So we talked about that white noise time when the phone's off. It's just time for you to do things that really fill you up. And, whether it's riding your motorcycle, snowmobile, reading certain books or talking to certain people, hanging out, doing certain things. I mean, you need those kinds of things in your calendar too, because if you just work 24/7, you're going to burn out pretty quick.
Yeah, no, I think that's awesome. And on the family front, like, do you think that you're still doing what you do solely for them? Like, is this for your kids at this point? Is this for your entertainment at this point? Because I roughly, I've seen some of your portfolio. I could guess at where somebody could find themselves in terms of financial independence. And like, so there's got to be a driver here, right? Is this purely a family thing?
Well, we've gone beyond that. And I think it's both, Adam. I'm doing this to continue to show my family what's possible. And, I want my kids to be exposed to things like finances and the things that they don't learn in school. And, the coolest part about my kids doing that triathlon the other day was, we always have a bit of a huddle before they go to sleep, right? We usually ask them questions like, what did you learn today? Who'd you help today? What would you do differently tomorrow, right? And we got talking about the event, and they're like, the event actually wasn't all that hard because we trained so hard, right? I'm like, yeah, that's why we started like 8 weeks ago, and we're doing the stuff around the neighborhood and pushing you guys and doing longer distances. And they're 8 and 10, and my 4-year-old trained a little bit, but we didn't want to push him too much. But I think it's so important to expose your kids to that sort of stuff. So I hope that they'll take over the legacy, right? They're definitely going to have to earn it. It's not just going to be given to them. Really great video from Kevin O'Leary. I think he was on the who are those? What's that really big podcast with the guys that fought Mayweather? But he was on there and just talked about how he set up a trust for his kids, and they only got paid until they're done college. After that, you guys are on your own. Like I'll get you to that finish line, but after that, you got to go make your own wealth, right? So but I don't know, man. I'll be doing business until the day I die. I just really enjoy it. The chasing a deal or, making sure that we can change people's lives, doing good things with good people. Right. So, I'm always here to make sure that people are getting value, and, it's, always above board, always ethical. Like, I'm not here to do anything. When people Google me, they're like, I can't find anything bad. I'm like, yeah, well, I'm not perfect, but if I make a mistake, I fix it pretty quick. And, we're here to change lives. We're not here to rip people off. So any shape or form. Yeah,
no, that's fascinating. That's really cool. But you just mentioned with your kids, kind of that like end of day sort of sum up or pep talk. I've actually never heard of that before. That's really fantastic. That would have been an extremely powerful tool to grow up with. I definitely would have benefited from that. But
they're such a sponge, right? Like if people are listening to this, they have kids, and you ask your kid, like, what'd you do at school today? And they say, I don't know. It's because like they're such a sponge, and they're uploading. They actually have to switch gears and change to actually literally think about all the things that they took in and that they did that day. But yeah, you're talking to their reticular activating system. You're talking to their subconscious a little bit. And it's kind of like that gratitude piece. If people do the 5-minute journal, that's a lot of the things in there as well. What were you happy with today? What would you do better? And, what were some of the most impactful things that you're grateful for, right? So
that's awesome. What role do you think athletics and physical fitness play in business and in life?
I think it's important, man. I mean, it's a form of pushing yourself. It's a healthy form of pushing yourself. And, unfortunately, it's getting lost these days, right? Like when I was growing up in grade school, we had the Canada Fitness test. So it was this test of like, how many sit-ups could you do? Push-ups could you do in a minute? Flexed arm hang, 1 mile run, 50-meter dash or 100-meter dash, depending on your age, standing long jump. I'm sure what they were trying to do is like seeing how good kids would be and correlate over to sports and stuff like that. But it was a good challenge. And you could see at a young age, like the kinds of people that would probably be successful in life and the people that wouldn't. But I think it's so important for someone to be focused on something, and you train, you focus, you put in that work, and you get a result, right? And whether the result is what you want or what you don't want, it's really it parallels life extremely well, right? So you're not always going to get what you want every single day, but are you going to like slip into a deep dark place over it, or you're just going to get over it and get on to the next thing, learn the lesson, keep moving forward? And my definition of success is just continue to move forward, continue to take those steps forward, and picking up the small wins and failures along the way. But just like you guys, like I hear all the time, right? Just move fast and break things. Don't be afraid of it. And so for some of the stuff I've taken on in the past couple of years, like I started a YouTube channel in March. Like it's been a challenge, right? It's been a great challenge, right? Just the level of the playing field is so much higher now. I should have started 5 years ago, but I wouldn't do it any other way. So when you're ready for those opportunities, you'll take the bite that you need to, for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. Where where are you finding your friends these days?
Yeah, great question, man.
I find myself with a lack of friends.
Because a lot of people can't relate, right? A lot of people just can't relate to any kind of level of what you guys are going through, right? So definitely in smaller rooms like masterminds, people that are doing similar things. So I'm sure you have some friends, but maybe you'd like to have more, or you're disconnected or far away, right? But we're also trying our best to bring people together. It's been like 2 years we just did like 4 meetups in 11 days. So just wanted to bring real estate investors together because there hasn't been as much of that going on. But yeah, it is there's lots of room at the top, but it can also be lonely at the top because a lot of people don't relate. Family members can't relate. Lots of times my wife doesn't relate to what I'm going through or what I'm focused on, right? So but it's those mastermind groups where other people are doing similar things that I think are important to get into.
Yeah. I've heard this answer from a lot of people, right? So it's fascinating that it always seems to come back to that. Like my like knee jerk reaction the very first time I heard of that, I was like, shit, you have to pay to get all your friends? Like, this is crazy. But I'm starting to understand it more and more over the last.
Good tax write-off. I mean, I'd rather get into rooms and improve myself than give it to the government. So
100%. And that's been sort of my realization over the last couple of years. It's just like, it's not about the paying for it. It's a pre-qualifier to get into rooms where people actually understand the level of challenge and scope of challenge, or scope of problems that you're solving. So no, that's definitely insightful. And I understand we're potentially golfing together soon. I need to get back to you, I guess.
To have you, man. So I know I was chatting with Rebecca there, and sorry, doing these meetups and stuff. It was our first round doing them. So it was like, okay, should we open up to the whole world, or should we just kind of focus on our students first and let them bring a +1, give them first option, right? But yeah, we'll start opening things up more and more. But just a short story about masterminds. Like literally, I'm same boat as you guys. It's hard to travel on planes and stuff sometimes. So I got the go ahead, got a religious exemption to fly to Mexico to do this mastermind with Craig Valentine, who's one of my mentors. And I literally got the go ahead. I literally, got my nose swabbed and booked my ticket and went down there. Missed the first half day just because WestJet took more than 21 days to give you your exemption. They took 22 days, but anyways, like, I met like 3 people down there that will definitely change my business or change our personal position, whether it was someone that could get us a passport in another country, or someone that can help out on the sales team or CRM or, ads or whatever it might be. Right. But it was totally worth it. Like, moved mountains to get there, and got sick while I was down there, drank some bad ice or something like that. And then, got the recommendation to quarantine when we got home, right? So there's all that nonsense still going on, which is ridiculous. But
so I don't want to end this podcast on a bad note, but I would like to know your broader thoughts right now. Like, how do you? It's a weird question, but like, I haven't been that proud to be a Canadian over the last couple of years, and this is weird. I found it very difficult to conceptualize like having a kid in this environment or anything along those lines. Like, I am really pessimistic about where the government and country is going, and generally just centralized power in general as a concept. Like, the more and more I read, last couple of years, I went down a history rabbit hole and I just read like all the history, like, and I probably went too far. I probably wasted time. Like I got beyond the point of like diminishing returns and just went crazy. But like the more you read, the more it seems obvious that this is a bad plan. Like this is a bad system. So I wonder, like, does somebody like yourself start thinking more proactively about that kind of thing now? Or is it probably this is not a big issue and us and your kids and the next generation, we might not ever live to see the full reckoning? Are you as pessimistic as me?
Yeah, I hear you, man. I've been able to represent like my country on numerous occasions, through sport and stuff like that. And yeah, definitely in the same boat. Not something I'm shouting from the rooftops of like, hey, go Canada. It's I think if this was happening in our parents' generation, they just didn't have the maybe the technology, or things weren't moving fast enough. Because I mean, some of the stuff can take up to a generation to happen. But yeah, these are definitely very, very weird times. I mean, where do you go? Like, where are the safe havens? Like, such poor leadership at the top. And I tell that right to Mr. Trudeau's face. It's like, I don't know how some of these people can sleep with themselves at night. Like, honestly, like, how do you answer these questions in a certain way, with whatever, the plan is in your head? It's just, man, it's manic. So.
Yeah. And I find myself a little bit, again, pessimistic. Like I've recently voted for the conservative leadership. So, drop that in the mail. And like, I think I know my candidate in Pierre Poilievre, but I also feel like there's a little bit of sulfur up at the mic stand, right? Like you just get the feeling that perhaps this is just a better mask that's being worn by somebody, right? And there's just still some other things being pulled behind the scenes. And like I really don't know how much power the figurehead has. Like it just seems like there's just a lot of inertia behind the finances. Like you just kind of follow the money of things. You can just kind of figure out like probably Trudeau doesn't actually have all that much power to do what's happening in Canada right now. But it's fascinating, man. But again, I said, we're not going to end this goddamn podcast on a down note. I'm still pessimistic. Kory MacKinnon's also pessimistic. I like that about him. He's a real man. We've got about 15 minutes left. I want to just chat about opportunity. A lot of craziness going on in the market right now. Inflation, and again, just a byproduct of the last couple of years, I think is catching up. Like, I think we were already at an interesting place in the market cycle. We've all been looking like geniuses for a little while in real estate. I'm very happy that I built my business during a time where you'd honestly just have to be completely dumb to not make money in real estate. So I got lucky, right? I royally screwed up several projects and still like either broke even or made money. So that was fantastic. But we're headed into a different market. So what changes for you in your business during these market cycles? So Ontario's been dropping roughly 8% per month for the last few months. Inflation's up, unemployment, I'm sure, is up or will be going up. And there's certainly uncertainty in the market. So what's different for you?
Yeah, I mean, and I think it's important that people still remain, like, you can be pessimistic in certain parts of your life, but you got to be optimistic, at least in yourself and your own abilities to continue to thrive and not just adapt. Like, a lot of people are talking about, oh, we'll adapt. You got to like adapt and then overcome and like still continue to persevere. It's so important, right? But it's not going to change the situation that, hey, as an investor, you do make money on the buy. You always got to be making sure that you're getting some sort of a deal on the buy. And there's going to be more and more motivated people out there. And again, we're not chasing ambulances, and we're not, forcing little old ladies and people in nursing homes to sign agreements they don't want to sign, right? But at the end of the day, I think people need to understand that price is not the number one concern for everybody when they're selling anything, right? It could be a cell phone, it could be a car, it could be a house. It doesn't matter, but lots of times they have a ticking clock, and they got to get things done and move on in their life, right? So they'd rather do business with people that they want to do business with. And it's kind of like going to a pawn shop. Why do people go to a pawn shop? Well, they got to go sell something quickly, or they got a piece of literature in the mail or whatever it might be, right? So I guess people should really be really know the numbers better. So again, there was a lot of people that weren't doing the math, weren't working spreadsheets, didn't really know what they were buying, and then they bought it and still made a bunch of mistakes, and they were rewarded by this crazy appreciation we had in the past couple of years. But I think it's going to bring up some of the older fundamentals when it comes to real estate investing. People have to be more creative. People have to really know their numbers. People have to have more than one exit strategy. They have to know how to find these types of deals, whether on market, off market, look for mistakes. Power team members, building a network, like all the fundamentals are going to be coming, front and center even more and more, right? As opposed to just like, oh, I buy anything from anybody and it goes up and valued by 20% a year. It's not sustainable. So great way to cut your teeth, but not sustainable in any ways, right? So
I love that the answer for literally anything, no matter how many gurus, masterminds, books, influencers, leaders that you talk to, it is literally always a regression to the mean, which is do the fundamentals, right? And in this case, it's probably, buy a cash flowing asset, or, buy a property at a great purchase price with a sustainable ceiling on the highest and best use for ARVs, that you can actually flip it for a profit, and then, have systems and processes down pat so you can get in and out of there quickly if you are going to be doing flips. So
it's got to have upside, right? It's got to have upside. It's got to be able to be, turned around quickly, or if it's going to be a long turn, it better be worth your while. It's got to be worth a dang if you're going to do the deal, right? So
love it.
For sure, 100%. And there's going to be more opportunities out there, right? Just, a lot of the dabblers went away, a lot of the hobbyists went away. So it's more of the serious investors. I hear good things about realtors. They're actually making short lists of, wholesalers and real estate investors that can actually close on properties. Unfortunately, a lot of their inventory is retail, like for the end user buyer, which doesn't always make sense for a real estate investor, but there will definitely be opportunities out there, right? A lot of people weren't preparing for this. They just don't have reserves, right? People are too maxed out. And that's, you can't max out everything. You always got to have some gunpowder in the gun ready to go.
Yeah, no, I'm 100% with you on that. And that's something that I think I've been most excited about. And it sounds a little perhaps Machiavellian, but I understood that this market was coming. I understood that most of my competitors would not have the cash or reserves to maintain the overhead, to maintain the marketing, to maintain the structure necessary to be extremely effective in this type of market cycle. And I'm fortunate that I built a business that is, essentially recession proof. Like, it works very well when the market's running hot, and works extremely well when the market's dumping. And so I think I'm most looking forward to the amount of opportunity that's coming, and just being able to be dynamic with that. Like, I know I laugh too when people are like, oh, well, we'll just adapt. How do we win? How do we win it all? Right? Like, how do we dominate to win? And I think that's a concept that people are missing. And I think if anybody's listening to this at this point, they're maybe interested in that concept of dominate to win. And I think you do that by not only like just being a product of your market, but like leveraging the market cycle that you're in. So like, we're going to increase marketing spend over the next few months. We're going to increase our efforts and really like to essentially 10x our efforts, not pull back. And I think that's a really key element to becoming a market leader. So yeah, I'm excited for this.
Yeah, the best businesses, as you know, Adam, are all forged through tougher times and recessions. And you look at Microsoft, you look at Disney, you look at even Nike. I mean, they're all just forged through the fire. And if anything, this is a great time to go find more talent on your team, to continue to invest in marketing, continue to put out content. I'm not slowing down. I'm putting out more, right? So other people are slowing down. It's amazing, all these like, people that are, driving the Lambos and all that kind of stuff. They're not posting as many stories these days, these fake millionaires or whatever, right? Just flexing or whatever on social media. So I'm glad that I'm not getting as many letters in my mailbox, but I know I'm still getting some from the more dominant companies, right? So just goes less competition. And, again, if you guys are still getting a return on your marketing spend, by all means, why would you stop spending?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great time to dial back. And one of the things you were saying earlier was just like really run a lean ship. Like, I think right now is the best time to make the changes that you knew you should have made and probably didn't, but you're like, oh, we had the abundance, so it was okay to have some slack. But I think now's the time to be like lean, efficient, and really like take ground, right? I think this is the time to really make those efforts. And I think there's a lot of wealth made in recessions. There's a lot of wealth made when the broader market's down, and we can take advantage of that through, again, like ethical, good business practices, like doing what we do best, helping people solve problems, and being there when somebody needs you, right? Like if they need speed, they need convenience, they need a professional to deal with their issues, then like it's our time to be that person, right? And it feels like this is what we've been studying for, right? This is the test, this is the exam, this is what we've been practicing for. Now let's go to work. So right. That's awesome, Kory. Well, I think we should end it on that note. Positivity, optimism, opportunity.
There's a lot of opportunity out there, right? And I think a lot of people just they don't recognize opportunity. It could literally hit them upside the head and they wouldn't recognize it. And other people, like the people listening to this and you and I, we see opportunity, right? And we know how to go out there and continue to find it and continue to bring it forward. So, but again, yeah, man, thanks for spending some time and reconnecting. It's been, again, like you said, too long, but yeah, if you got a golf game, man, let's make sure we're hitting the course on August 7th.
Yeah, sounds good. I'm going to have to check in with my mom because my mom is hanging out with her sister and her husband, who are here from Italy with their kids. And so we have some plans. We do have some plans to do like aquariums and maybe Wonderland or something to that effect. So I just have to see what my schedule is like. But if I'm free, I will absolutely be there. And if not, I'll be thinking of you, but I'll be running around and chasing fish with the kiddos. So
there you go.
Awesome, Kory. Great connecting again. And if you're still listening to this, I hope you are all taking advantage of the optimism, opportunity, and energy that we are trying to share with you through this episode. We'll see you on the next one. Cheers.